Talk Radio 102.3, the Talk Monster.
This is America the Beautiful, right now on Talk Radio 102.3. Here's your host, Steve Abramowicz, with the Heartland Journal.
Welcome back, friends. The jersey is green. How many times are we going to let them play us for fools? That is the question every grassroots Republican in Tennessee has to answer, and answer soon, because the people we have been electing, in many cases for decades, are not who they pretend to be. They wear the red jersey, they show up at the Lincoln Day dinners, they mouth the platitudes about faith and family and freedom and limited government, but when the doors close, when the votes are counted, when the rules are written, their jerseys aren't red, they're green, the color of money. The color of power for power's sake. Let's stop pretending we don't know who they are. We all know the establishment wing of this party. It's the Bush, Cheney, Romney, McCain axis. It's the corporatists, the pharmaceutical giants, the tech monopolies, the retail chains, the developers, and construction companies who make their money not by serving customers better, but by controlling all the levers of government. Big, big, big. And it's the political aristocracy that runs cover for them. In the Democratic Party, you know the names, Pelosi, Schumer, the Clintons. But don't think for a second that aristocracy stops at the partisan line. Over in the GOP, it's Mitch McConnell, John Thune, Mike Johnson, and right here in Tennessee, it's Marsha Blackburn. It's Bill Lee, it's Jack Johnson, it's Cameron Sexton. These are not public servants in the way you and I understand the term. They're not there to make your life better. They profit off control. Issues and ideology only matter to them when inaction threatens the gravy train. They will stand at the podium and say all the right things. They'll pass bills that sound good. They'll say Reagan's their favorite president, but the action is scant, and when it does happen, it is often flaccid. Let me give you two examples from right here in Tennessee. In 2021, because of a groundswell from Moms for Liberty and angry parents across the state, the legislature passed the Inappropriate Materials Act. Sounded great, made great headlines, but it was written with loopholes you could drive a truck through. Williamson County Schools basically laughed at it. It took a lawsuit to get them to enforce a law that was already on the books. Or look at the strong right to life legislation passed back in 2019. Now ask yourself, why did they pass it then? They passed it because there was no perceived risk of it actually being enacted. It was theater. It was a costume. And now that the landscape has shifted, now that there might actually be consequences, what are we seeing? Efforts to walk it back. That is who they are. They want you asleep. They want you complacent. They want you to believe everything is awesome, that the Republican supermajority has everything under control. So please go back to your job. Trump's in charge. Be complacent. Your farm, your small business, and leave the governing to them. And if you dare poke your head up, if you dare demand they actually do what the platform says, they will attack you, even if you're in the same party. Especially if you're in the same party, because you are not part of their network. You are not part of the club. Like George Carlin said, these people live and breathe politics. For many of them, it is how they make their money, and they will lie to you repeatedly without compunction. I'm not saying any of them have lied to you or have lied to me, but they will if you call them on it. They shrug and say, it's just generated on your device. Politics. They endorse one another to give legitimacy to their chosen slate. They have all the money. They have the PACs. They have the media access. They have a national network, a state network, and a local network, and all those networks intersect, and they are ruthless. Now, who are we? We are the grassroots. We are the base. We are the average voter who actually believes in the platform the party espouses. We are the folks who, by and large, are not political junkies. We're content to let the system work because we have jobs to do, children to raise, churches to serve, communities to build, lawn to mow, cows to feed. We wear the jersey of our home team. We seek power not for our own sake, but to make change and improve everyone's situation. We are generally honest. We avoid name calling. We get inflamed when an issue affects us directly, when COVID shuts down our churches and businesses, when our schools try to indoctrinate our kids or become target practice. But when things seem to calm down, when the temperature drops, we melt back into the woodwork. We go home because we don't want to live in the political arena. We want to live our lives. And that is our great strength and our great vulnerability. Because while we melt back into the woodwork, they stay. While we trust the system, they rig the system. We have a few endorsements because we have few people in power. Our candidates have little money. We have few PACs and supporting organizations. We have almost no access to the media. And we are disjointed, mostly unorganized, lacking the network power that the establishment wields every single day. Look at the state of Tennessee. We are a red state, overwhelmingly Republican. We gradually swung away from the Democrats through the 90s and 2000s, culminating in the legislature flipping in the late 2000s. We should be the model of conservative governance, but are we? We have a statewide GOP aristocracy: Bill Frist, Bill Haslam, Lamar Alexander, Bob Corker, Marsha Blackburn. These are not people who wandered in from the pasture. They are a political class, and they have built a supermajority legislature that is dominated not by you, not by the voter, but by a very aggressive and monolithic ruling caste. In the House, Cameron Sexton and William Lambeth rule with an iron fist. In the Senate, it's Randy McNally and Jack Johnson. Legislation they favor gets pushed, often with considerable arm twisting behind closed doors. Now again, I like these guys. I'd hang out with them. I'd listen to them play music. But this is how the job gets done in Tennessee. Legislation they disfavor gets killed in committee. When the public never sees it, never even knows it died, loyal foot soldiers get rewarded. Dissenters get crushed. Ask Jody Barrett. Ask Todd Warner. They will tell you what happens when you step out of line. Now, the grassroots made a splash post-COVID. Groups like Tennessee Conservative News, Moms for Liberty, Tennessee Stands, they gained real political traction and they earned the ire of the establishment. At first, the establishment went on defense. They acquiesced a little. They tried to mollify the base without really addressing the issues. But now they appear to be going on the offensive, and they have an opportunity because the average voter is no longer inflamed. Trump complacement syndrome. The national climate feels favorable. Trump is back in the White House. Republicans hold majorities in the House and Senate, and all is well. And that calm, that sense of relief creates an opening for the establishment to tighten its grip while we're not looking. Which brings me to the State Executive Committee. For those who don't know, the SEC, not the Southeastern Conference or the Securities and Exchange Commission, formerly known as, the SEC is the governing body of the Republican Party here in Tennessee. Both parties have one. It is mandated by state law, TCA 2-13-102, and I want you to think about that for a second. Why does state law dictate the functioning of what is supposed to be a private political party? That alone should tell you how entangled the political class is with the machinery of government. The SEC has 66 members. 2 per state Senate district, 1 male and 1 female, 4-year terms elected by you. And they hold enormous power. They create the bylaws. They define what a bona fide Republican even is. I couldn't run for office the first year I came here because I wasn't bona fide by their standards. They determine candidate qualifications. They control access to the ballot for the Republican candidates. They have standing to sue the state over laws that violate the First Amendment freedom of association. They could have considerable power over elected officials if they chose to use it. They could hold people accountable to the party platform. They could exclude political participation by people who are not actually Republicans, but who want to capture the party machinery. But history shows a lack of desire. History shows abdication. History shows that the people we have elected to the SEC have been content to let the aristocracy run the show. Why? Because the establishment understands something we are only now beginning to grasp. Whoever controls the party rules controls the party. And whoever controls the party controls the ballot. And whoever controls the ballot controls the government. Now, I'm using Tennessee as an example, but this can be repeated in every single state in America. This is the system that we inherited from our grandparents. Friends, we are not losing because our ideas are wrong. We are losing because we go home too early. We are losing because we assume a red jersey means a faithful heart. An R by their name on the ballot does not mean conservative. We are losing because we trust people who have proven time and again that they will lie to our faces, pass hollow bills, and crush anyone who threatens their grip on power. Again, just because you're a Republican Just because you like the name Ronald Reagan does not mean you're a conservative in the Barry Goldwater, Tennessee values, Davy Crockett sense. And that's okay. Politics is open for interpretation. It's not an art. It's not a science. It is an office to be held and to maintain power, because if you lose an election, you can't exactly influence any power out of the office. So I get it. We all get it. It makes sense. But there is good news. They fear you. They fear an awake and organized grassroots more than anything else, because we outnumber them. We always have. The only question is whether we will stay in the arena long enough to finish the fight. The jersey is green. The battle is for power. And the time to stop being played for fools is right now. I came to Tennessee like a lot of you did because it was the reddest of red states, and it was one of the ones that handled COVID a lot better than the others, but it always has its flaws. Again, just because you're a Republican doesn't make you a reincarnation of Ronald Reagan. You can vote when you're in office any which way you want, but they really should listen to the voters in their districts. That is how you win re-election. And you don't have to go on defense if you want to maintain the job, especially since there is so much pressure. The media is not on your side. The out-of-state money is not on your side. The PACs are not on your side just because you are a Republican. So if that is the party that you decide to stand up and say, yes, I'm a part of, you should be bona fide. You should have some grassroots interpretations of the laws and the Constitution of both Tennessee and the United States of America, or else don't run for office. You can make a heck of a lot more money as a lobbyist or a car salesman or selling shoes at Nordstrom's. You don't have to be an assemblyman who has to work January through April only for under $50,000 a year. I think way under, maybe $30,000. Don't quote me on that right now. But the point I just want to make, and I'll talk about this more on the other side of the break, is that there are such things as bona fide Republicans. There are such things as moderate Republicans. There's also such things as Republicans in name only, or a rhino. And those rhinos are a problem, especially in a place where we can not only have crossover voting, which means if you agree with Democrats and Democrats vote for you, but you say you're a Republican because the state thinks you are and you're from a county that has under 25% voter turnout, then that's really perpetuating some type of fraud on the electorate, because you know that they don't know who they're getting as their representative. And I think there should be way more scrutiny over every candidate, and they should answer questions, and they should talk to their people, and they should come down into Williamson County and into Davidson County suburbs and talk to people so that they can get to know them, to actually understand. One of the greatest things that happened to me when I moved to Tennessee is I picked up the phone and I called Todd Warner, I called Jody Barrett, I called Jack Johnson, I called Lee Reeves, I called a long list of folks from Mark Pody to Janice Bowling, and they answered the phone. In Seattle, where I'm coming from, they don't answer the phone. You cannot talk to you may not even know the name of your local district assembly person. What a shame that is. Can you even imagine that in Tennessee? Especially during the emergency of COVID, when you may actually have really needed something, not just a pothole fixed in your driveway. And believe me, there was plenty. It rains there a lot. So if we're going to maintain Tennessee as the reddest of red states and not hand the keys of the city hall back to the Democrats like it had for 100 plus years, that I think the elected officials need to stand up and start representing the platform, the Republican Party that they say that they are with. And if they have a disagreement with something that's before them in the legislature, don't just let it stall in committee. Let it get out there into the floor and see about what the state really wants from all 95 counties. That's democracy. That's how we keep a red state red, by actually listening to the red voters. All right, talk to you in a second. Thanks for sticking around. I'm Steve Abramowicz, the host of America the Beautiful. Hey, Steve A here. Are you a speaker, artist, or creator stuck doing everything yourself? At Heartland Media Group, you don't have to. We're the fully integrated media company that handles speaker bookings, artist management, social media growth, book publishing, and movie and TV development. One team, one vision, zero limits. Stop juggling a dozen agencies. Get the partner built for your success. Visit heartlandmediagroup.com. That's heartlandmediagrp.com. You'll be glad you did.
Talk Radio 102.3.
This is America the Beautiful, right now on Talk Radio 102.3. Here's your host, Steve Abramowicz, with the Heartland Journal.
And I'm back. I missed you. I hope you missed me too. Normally, nobody pays attention to the state executive committee races, and that is exactly how the establishment likes it. These races are usually quiet, uncontested affairs. You might see a name on the ballot you barely recognize, check the box because it has an R beside it, and move on. But this year, friends, something is different. This cycle, there are numerous contested SEC races, and if you look closely at who is doing the contesting and where and why, a pattern emerges that should set off every alarm bell you have. Right here where I live in Williamson County, both incumbents in Senate District 27 are being challenged. In District 28, one of the two incumbents is being challenged. Now, why would normally sleepy races suddenly attract competition? Because these incumbents are not establishment, because they have shown independence, because they answer to the grassroots. These are the ones who made Tennessee and kept Tennessee, Tennessee. And the aristocracy has decided it is time to remove them. Some might call them rhinos. Let me tell you who the challengers are, because the resumes matter. Mary Kate Anderson Brown, Stevie Giorno, Dennis Driggers. On the surface, they look like Republican activists, but dig an inch below the topsoil and you see the connective tissue to the exact political aristocracy we just discussed. Now again, caveat, that's okay. That's how the system is played. I get it. You can't get into power if you don't cozy up to power. But if you're going to campaign as a Republican, you should say so. So, Mary Kate Anderson Brown is not some outsider trying to shake up the system. She is the system. I've never met the woman, but I can see she's the system. She was a delegate coordinate for Mitt Romney and Jeb Bush. She was campaign manager for Ken. What is Ken's last name? Ken Moore. Charles Sargent and Sam Whitson, names that if you've been around Williamson County politics, you know pretty well. If you're in Davidson County or any of the other counties, you have no idea. She ran for Williamson County Republican Party chairman and failed. Then she served as special assistant to Chairman Sherrell Brown from 2019 to 2023. Now note that time frame. The party division in this county did not stabilize during those years. It ramped up exponentially, and she was right there in the middle of it. Stevie Giorno, great guy, love him. He is the former Williamson County Young Republican and former state Young Republican chair, served as second vice chair of the WCRP, was a campaign aide to Marsha Blackburn, great resume, and just this year, she was a candidate for the Williamson County Conservative slate for the WCRP board. Sorry, Steve. Dennis Driggers is a Williamson County School District 3 school board member. All three challengers, all recruited apparently by the establishment political aristocracy to run against sitting SEC incumbents. That's my theory. I don't know for sure, but it makes sense. And if you think this is just a local squabble, you're missing the plot. This is part of a broader attempt by the establishment to get control of the Tennessee Republican Party and its rulemaking body to facilitate a complete takeover of Republican politics in this state for the foreseeable future. Let me give you the receipts on Mary Kate Brown, because her history tells you exactly what kind of party governance she believes in. In 2019, she was openly trying to vouch non-Republicans into the Williamson County Republican Party convention so they could vote for her for chairman. Think about that. The Republican Party convention, and she was trying to pack it with people who were not Republicans, allegedly. Then in 2023, she was on the Contest and Credentials Committee that resigned en masse because the state party would not grant them the ability to vouch whoever they wanted into the convention. That was the same convention that got delayed for 3 weeks, ostensibly because of the number of registrants. But there was a larger facility available on the original evening. It was rejected by Chairman Sherrell Brown. It is highly likely they knew they had a numbers problem and were trying to stall so they could scrounge up more votes. When they couldn't rig the room, they threw a fit and quit. But here's the kicker. Mary Kate Brown has not only tried to let non-Republicans in, she's been positively ruthless in trying to keep actual Republicans out. In 2022, Cheryl Brown's board actively dissuaded conservative Republicans from running for office. And in the fall prior, Mary Kate Brown was caught on video saying she could get people permitted to run for office if she knew them well enough. Not if they were the best candidate, not if they represented the people, not if they were Republicans, not if they were bona fide, if she knew them well enough. That same year, the board conducted a Soviet-style purge of Sean Rasman. Sorry if I said your name wrong. Removing him as first vice chair, and when District 7 needed a nominee to replace the deceased Bert Chalfant, the board rejected numerous voters attempting to participate in the special convention. So let's be clear about the playbook. When they need votes, they want to let non-Republicans in the door. When they want to keep power, they slam the door on actual conservatives. Inclusion and exclusion are not principles for them. They are tactical weapons. Now look at Stevie Giorgio's connection to Marsha Blackburn. Fantastic. This suggests a top-down strategy to run the Republican Party the same way the state legislature is run. A monolith, a machine. If they capture the SEC, anyone seeking access to the ballot as a Republican will have to be approved by party elites. If they don't like you, if you deviate from their orthodoxy, if you actually want to challenge a sitting member of the aristocracy or think that school vouchers are too darn expensive for the whole state to handle for 97% of the qualified kids that is now determined to be, that's billions of dollars, roadblocks will be erected. You will be denied. Defiance will not be tolerated. The same iron fist that Sexton and Lambert wield in the House will be brought to bear on the party itself. This is the endgame. Control the rules, control the ballot, control the state, and they are doing it while the grassroots is relaxed. While the national climate feels good, Trump is in office, I'm complacent. While Trump is in the White House and people are breathing easy, they are counting on you being complacent. They're counting on you seeing an R next to a name and checking the box without looking at the person behind the name or remembering that you got 50,000 mailers in your mailbox last week. We cannot let that happen. The State Executive Committee is not a ceremonial body. I want you to hear this. It is not a rubber stamp. It is not a social club. It is the governing body of this party, of this state. It writes the bylaws. It defines the Republican. It controls the ballot. It can sue to protect our freedom of association. It has standing. It has power. It has leverage over elected officials. And if the establishment captures it, they will use that power not to hold politicians accountable to the platform, to protect the politicians from the people. There is a solution. It is a straightforward. It does not require $1 million or a media empire or a PAC. It requires that you pay attention, that you tell your neighbors, and that you vote, and that you listen to this show. Re-electing Cindy Miller, Steve Albrooks, and Chris Morris appears to be the best solution. I'm not endorsing anybody, man. I can't tell you enough. You got to do your own homework. Do not look. I will not give you medical advice, and I'm not going to give you who to vote for advice, but just look at those three and compare them to their opponents, and you might see what I'm talking about. These are incumbents who have not bowed to the machine. They have a voting record, a paper trail. It's not what they say, it's what they do. These are the ones who have not been handpicked by the Romney, Bush, Blackburn wing to come in and rewrite the rules, the ones that I love, that you love probably when you moved here from California, Chicago, or New York. They need your vote, your voice, and your presence. This is our line in the sand. Not next year, not in the next governor's race 4 years from now, right now in these SEC races. And again, not many people have even heard of that too many people have just ignored. Because if we lose the party machinery to the establishment, it will not matter how good our candidates are in the future. The gatekeepers will have already locked the gates. Again, that doesn't mean this is Jack Johnson sitting in a room smoking a cigar, making these people dance with strings attached. This is just how politics is played. From Tammany Hall in New York City to Chicago to LA to Seattle and right here in Nashville. So I'm trying to get you to understand that if you have a choice to sit out an election, you may not want to actually do that. You might want to take the alternative route, do a little homework on the candidates, see if they agree with you and your values, and vote accordingly. Anytime that you see a record low turnout, you know there's a problem. If there's a record high turnout, like when a president is on the ballot, that's exciting, that's good. that's the chance that when you get to exercise your liberty and your democracy and get to say, yes, I did my civic duty and I voted. When you don't, and you look at yourself as part of the 75% who don't turn out, that's a problem. And you can't really complain either, because you get what you get. They have the money, they have the PACs, they have the media, they have the endorsements, they have the network. They don't have you. We have the numbers. We have the truth. We have the platform, and we have the votes if we use them. Do not let them turn the Tennessee Republican Party into a private club for the green jersey aristocracy. Not on our watch. By the way, I'm going to say it again. Marsha Blackburn, A-rated Liberty score as a senator, the highest of all 100 senators, much less the 50 that are call themselves Republicans. She is bona fide. She has a great resume. Stevie Giorno, same thing, great resume. That's not my point. My point is the time to fight is now. The place is the SEC, and the decision, as always it should be in America, is yours. All right, turning the page real quick within the time I have remaining in this segment. I just want to read to you from heartlandjournal.com an article I wrote called Lovingly and Approvingly Red Diaper Obama on July 31st, 2026. Donald Trump does have one genuine superpower. He makes people reveal who they truly are. John Kasich, for instance, spent years masquerading as a conservative lion from Ohio, only to unmask himself as a guy with the emotional fortitude of a parking meter and the electoral success of a participation trophy. He's soft, he's annoying. Did you know his dad was a postman? Just ask him. He campaigned for Biden with the zeal of a man who had just discovered avocado toast. He is not, however, a communist, and neither was the guy who actually won those elections by embarrassing margins while Kasich sulked in the green room. Because somewhere between petty tweets and midterm meltdowns, a certain slice of the right convinced themselves that Barack Obama, a moderate Democrat who bailed out Wall Street and let billionaires accrue wealth at a record clip, was secretly the second coming of Mao. Obama, the thin-skinned communist who was so committed to the revolution that he oversaw a booming stock market, expanded domestic oil drilling, and never once tried to rationalize your podiatrist's office or collectivize your lawnmower. If that's a red revolution, then I'm a breakfast taco with a side of dialectical materialism. I'm not. The smoking AK-47 of this cuckoo conspiracy is the 2012 Roanoke speech. You didn't build that. The horror, the treason, the confiscation of small business dreams, except Obama was stating the unconventional fact that success relies on individual initiative and the public system that allows commerce to function, roads, schools, the internet born from government research. He wasn't, not Al Gore, he wasn't dispatching a Politburo commissar to seize your bakery. He was noting that your delivery van drives on taxpayer-funded asphalt and your employees learn to read in public schools. If acknowledging that civilization requires teamwork makes you a communist, then Dwight D. Eisenhower is practically Stalin in a cardigan. The interstate system, private contractors, public funds, a marriage older than your grandpa's mortgage, the Hoover Dam, built under Herbert Hoover, whose name is literally on the dam, and who was about as red as a Wall Street ledger on bonus days. I'm going to finish this at the other side of the break, so please come on back. Hopefully that was a good tease. I'm Steve Abramowicz. This is America the Beautiful. Hey, Steve A here. Are you a speaker, artist, or creator stuck doing everything yourself? At Heartland Media Group, you don't have to. We're the fully integrated media company that handles speaker bookings, artist management, social media growth, book publishing, and movie and TV development. One team, one vision, zero limits. Stop juggling a dozen agencies. Get the partner built for your success. Visit heartlandmediagroup.com. That's heartlandmediagrp.com. You'll be glad you did.
Talk Radio 102.3.
This is America the Beautiful, right now on Talk Radio 102.3. Here's your host, Steve Abramowicz, with the Heartland Journal.
All right, welcome back. I am still Steve Abramowicz, and this is still America the Beautiful on WTN 99.7. Thanks for coming back. I hope you did. I'm going to pick up where I left off. It is class warfare by negligence, and it treats the constitutional protections and bodily safety of vulnerable communities as afterthoughts. It should enrage every citizen that a 22-year-old college graduate with a sociology degree and a 6-week orientation packet can sit in judgment over whether a violent felon with 3, 30, 80 in some cases prior convictions for aggravated assault gets to go home and await trial. It should make your blood boil that Virginia and North Carolina knowingly permit this, even as prosecutors trumpet rising crime rates and communities beg for relief. This is not how a serious civilization operates. You would not let a person without a medical license perform open heart surgery. You would not let a person without an engineering degree design a bridge. I hope not. Yet we let glorified clerks with no demonstrated expertise in the law, no accountability for their mistakes, and increasingly no obligation to weigh the genuine danger a defendant poses, cut violent offenders loose to prey again. 37 states allow individuals with a law degree to make detention decisions in at least some criminal cases. These states authorize individuals serving in a variety of roles with little more than a high school diploma and less than a week's worth of training to make critical criminal justice decisions. The recidivism is not an accident. It is the predictable, inevitable result of handing the keys to the courthouse to people who never earned them. The bail reform in Virginia and the inadequacy of magistrate training in North Carolina are not signs of a compassionate system. They are signs of a system that has lost its mind and abdicated its first duty, to protect the innocent from the cruel. We do not need more sensitivity seminars for magistrates. We need to strip them of the power to release violent offenders until they are fully qualified attorneys operating in open court under the scrutiny of elected judges who answer to the public when the released predator strikes again. Until that happens, the blood spilled by recidivist monsters released by these amateur hour proceedings stains the hands of every legislature and court administrator who allowed this disgrace to continue. Enough is enough. No law degree, no bail authority. It is the only standard a serious society would accept. Again, you can see that and many, many more. That one's called A Magistrate, Not a Judge. Now you see why. And I am firmly of the belief that if a doctor, lawyer, judge, taxi driver, Uber driver, teacher has to have continuing education and training before they can ever affect the lives of anyone else, especially when you're dealing with criminal law and justice, and a magistrate is not even adequate for the job, especially in this day and age. You can see on your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed how this is going. It's not going well. It's an easy fix. We can do that. So you can see stories like that and more at heartlandjournal.com when you're not listening to me here on Saturday. But I want to thank you for being here on a Saturday and listening to me. I hope you are. I hope you stayed for the full hour. I'm having a great time, and I really thank WTN for letting me do this and encourage me to keep it going. So I will, until further notice, until I hear from you that it's irrelevant and you don't like it anymore. That day will come, but hopefully not too soon. So I don't know about y'all, and hopefully I don't lose half or more of the audience after I tell you this, but I'm a history buff. I really like to look at patterns and see what happened in the past because I believe that adage that says history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so I like to look at the past to determine maybe where things are going in the future, where we could stay on track instead of going off track. Let's not repeat the errors of the past that cost sometimes millions and millions of lives or millions and millions of dollars. Let's fix it. Let's do it right this time and not do the old adage of the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different mistake, like Bart Simpson sticking his finger in the electric socket over and over again, thinking it won't hurt this time. It usually hurts every time, unless your power goes out. I want to read you this one too, in our time together. A populist anti-tax narrative of U.S. fiscal history. Now, please don't let your eyes glaze over this. I think it's pretty interesting. You tell me someday, but if we meet. But in the meantime, just check this out. Bear with me for a second is what I'm saying. The first federal income tax was a temporary Civil War measure enacted under Abraham Lincoln. However, it was repealed in 1872. Okay, that should be the end of it, right? Never hear about it again. The Supreme Court upheld that tax in Springer versus United States, 1881. The 1894 peacetime income tax, passed as part of the Wilson-Gorman Tariff Act, was indeed struck down as unconstitutional in Pollock versus Farmers' Loan and Trust Company, 1895, which barred direct taxes on income derived from property. Case closed. We should have entered the 1900s. Never talking about taxes again. Well, President William Howard Taft proposed a corporate exercise tax in 1909, enacted in the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act, later upheld in Flint versus Stone Tracy Co. 1911. Theodore Roosevelt advocated for an inheritance tax but never signed one into law. The modern federal estate tax was enacted in the Revenue Act of 1916 under Woodrow Wilson. The 16th Amendment, authorizing a federal income tax without apportionment, was proposed by Congress in 1909 and ratified in February 1913, before Wilson took office. Wilson signed the Revenue Act of 1913 later that year, imposing a 1% tax on incomes over $3,000 for individuals, $4,000 for married couples, affecting roughly the wealthiest 2 to 3% of households, not exclusively the top 1%. That same year, Congress created the Federal Reserve, though the two measures were legally and functionally separate. Ultimately, while direct income tax was once deemed unconstitutional, the 16th Amendment made it constitutionally valid. It was forced on Americans with a legal basis in the formal amendment process. According to recent polling from early 2026, public sentiment toward the federal income tax is broadly negative on a personal level, yet Americans largely support taxing corporations and the wealthy more, not eliminating the system altogether. Views on personal taxes. Gallup finds that roughly 6 in 10 Americans say their own federal taxes are too high, a figure that has remained elevated since 2023. Only about 46% say the amount they pay in income taxes is fair, essentially tied with the record low from 1999. Majorities across lower, middle, and upper income brackets say their tax burden is too high. Views on corporations and the wealthy. By contrast, Americans do not believe the system is uniformly overtaxing everyone. 70% say corporations pay too little in income tax, and a Pew Research Center survey found that most Americans continue to favor raising taxes on higher income households and corporations. A separate January 2026 Pew study found that a top frustration with the federal tax system is the belief that wealthy people and corporations do not pay their fair share. Fairness and reform preferences. A 2024 Tax Foundation poll showed that 59% of respondents believe federal income tax rates are too high, including 80% of the Republicans and 38% of Democrats. However, when asked what a fair top tax rate would be, only 8% said 0. Plurality support centered on 10 or 20%. This suggests that while Americans are dissatisfied with current rates and complexities, there is no broad majority for abolishing the income tax entirely. Favorability is low. Most Americans feel personally overtaxed and see the system as unfair. But polling consistently shows the public wants the burden shifted upward onto corporations and high earners rather than eliminating the income tax completely. According to early 2026 government reports and enforcement actions, here are the most recent dollar figures related to improper payments and fraud across major social welfare and benefit programs. Stick with me, folks. This is the big finish. Total federal improper payments in a June 2026 report. What is this? August, just this June, the Government Accountability Office, GAO, estimated that federal programs lost approximately $186 billion, your money, in improper payments during fiscal year 2025, the most recent complete annual tally. This figure spans about 64 programs across 15 agencies and includes overpayments, underpayments, payments to ineligible recipients, and fraud. The 5 largest sources were Medicaid, Medicare, the Earned Income Tax Credit, SNAP, food stamps, and the SBA's Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. USDA noted the SNAP's national payment error rate for fiscal year 2025 was 10.6%, nearly double the statutory threshold set in the 2025 One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Strictly fraud versus administrative error. It is important to note the difference between improper payments and provable fraud. The USDA explicitly states that payment error rates are not the same thing as fraud, since errors are often unintentionally eligibility or calculation mistakes. Fraud involves intentional deception and represents a subtext of the total. Okay, that being said, 2026 criminal fraud enforcement. For calendar year 2026 actions, the Department of Justice and the HHS Office of Inspector General announced a June 2026 national healthcare fraud takedown involving $6.5 billion in alleged fraud claims. Separately, CMS reported that Medicare program integrity efforts identified a record $41.9 billion with a B in fiscal year 2025 savings and program integrity actions. That means finding the fraud. While no single official figure isolated pure social welfare fraud from honest error, the government's most recent estimate for improper payments in welfare-related programs is approximately $47.6 billion of your U.S. taxpayer money annually. That's Medicaid and SNAP alone, with the broader universe of federal income improper payments at, are you ready? Are you sitting down? Are you driving? You got your seatbelt on? At $186 billion for fiscal year 2025. That's 1 year, folks. For context, the government collected roughly $5.3 trillion in revenue in 2025 from you and me, resulting in an annual budget deficit of $1.8 trillion. We owe it to ourselves. A decrease of about $41 billion from fiscal year 2024. Well, that's nice. But still one of the largest shortfalls in U.S. history. CBO noted the major spending growth in fiscal year 25 was driven by the government's largest benefit program and notably net interest on the federal debt, which surpassed $1 trillion for the first time in that year, 2025, last year. If you are one of the 98.8% of Americans employed as of June 2026, this is your tax dollars at work. All right, I want to thank everybody once again for sticking with me for an hour. It's a lot to do. I did it for you. I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of information in there. I can only imagine, since it's not a back and forth type show like I'm used to with question and answers of interesting guests. It's just me talking into this microphone. I'm hoping that it resonates out there in the universe and that we all can just get along. And so the bottom line of today's show is I'm trying to explain that the reason why we have low turnout is a lot of apathy and a lot of jadedness, actually, and some cynicism. And we don't have to have that if we were an engaged citizenry. That's the way the system was designed, not just for a virtuous citizen, but for an engaged citizen who actually looks out at their community where they live, their children's futures, and votes accordingly. And so we can have our democracy back, and we can also have whatever society we want for ourselves in this country, the only country, America the Beautiful. That's why I titled it this, the only country founded on liberty. De Tocqueville is the one who said, I can't believe how much engagement in civic action they have in the United States compared to where he's from in France, or what was under King George at the time. And so there's a reason, and this is our 250th anniversary, and so we should embrace that, love that, look around, enjoy the beauty of America. Don't do things that disrupt or distract or destroy that beauty. Let's embrace it, let's encourage it, let's do more of it so that our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids can have the greatest century or two that the earth has ever seen. That's the goal. That's why I say America the Beautiful. That's why I love you, and that's why I have this show, so that you can hear from me, at least one person's opinion, that everything is going to be all right. Just be engaged and don't let them get you down. All right. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to talking to you again soon. 1 week from now, you can also check out the show at heartlandjournal.com every Tuesday and Thursday. Some new content, new guests. Heartland Journal is what we're calling that one. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Peace in our time and glory to God.
Talk Radio 102.3.
This is America the Beautiful, right now on Talk Radio 102.3. Here's your host, Steve Abramowicz, with the Heartland Journal.
And we are back. Thank you for coming back. I'm still Steve Abramowicz. This still is America the Beautiful on WTN 99.7, and you are still my favorite audience in the whole wide world. So thank you for coming back. Tell a friend about this show if you like it. This is episode 2, so we're going to keep on chugging along as long as you are interested. All right, back to my article that I wrote called Red Diaper Obama. In the opening statements, you may not really get where I'm going with this, but if you stick around, you will very clearly understand the point. NASA put a man on the moon using private aerospace firms, government funding, and capitalist lowest bidders. A reality John Glenn famously joked about while hurling through space. This isn't Marxist collectivization, it's subcontracting with better helmets. Even under Obama's supposedly socialist reign, American education allowed people to opt out for private, parochial, or homeschool options. In a genuine communist state, the only choice is between state elementary number 4 and re-education camp with muddy potatoes and an inspiring poster of a dictator number 11. Now, some aspiring candidates in Denver recently declared that socialism is when the roads are paved and the fire trucks show up. Bless her heart, but stretching government exists into Marxist takeover is like calling a mall cop the Gestapo because he asked you to stop skateboarding by the Auntie Anne's. The absurd punchline. Obama governed so far to the left that Jeff Bezos became the richest man on earth and corporate profits hit astronomical highs. If he was running a red revolution, he forgot to tell the capitalist who treated his 8 years like an extended Black Friday sale where the doorbuster was deregulation. So relax. The only thing genuinely red about Obama was the electoral map after he beat Mitt Romney twice and the Republican tears he collected in his retirement martini glass. I wrote that. You can read that yourself at heartlandjournal.com, and I want to read another one to you. So I write these every Friday, and you can get them in your inbox anytime you want, because if you subscribe at heartlandjournal.com, we'll deliver them to you Monday through Friday for free. You can see any new episodes of the podcast, not this show, the podcast, as well as my contributors Vincent Cavallari and Booker Scott and Scott Jansen and a whole stable of folks that are contributing to entertain and infotain you. And you can subscribe for free at heartlandjournal.com, and you won't miss one of these. All right. And they also did a bunch of state-by-state election watches for 2026, so you can get a lay of the land of it. Just about almost any state. I'm not going to do all 50, but I'm going to do the states that are close. All right. Kill this housing bill before it kills the suburbs by Steve. Wow, that's a salacious headline. What's he have to say? Okay, I'll tell you. Congress has already made a grave mistake by passing the so-called ROAD, R-O-A-D, to Housing Act with veto-proof majorities. Now President Trump is refusing to sign it, and Republicans on Capitol Hill ought to let him have his way. Instead of scheming to override a potential veto, GOP lawmakers should stand down and allow this bloated, destructive piece of progressive social engineering to die. Let's be honest about what this bill actually does. It masquerades as a bipartisan effort to make housing more affordable. But in reality, it is a massive expansion of federal power into local communities. The bill shovels billions in new spending toward housing and urban development bureaucrats, attaching strings that force suburban towns to dramatically densify neighborhoods, accept high-rise apartment complexes, and cater to a Washington-driven vision of equitable development. If you like your neighborhood's character, too bad, HUD knows better. It's no surprise that the animating force behind this legislation disaster is Senator Elizabeth Warren, a politician who has parlayed the art of government failure into a lucrative side career as a memoirist. Warren fancies herself a champion of the working class, yet every policy she authors seems to end the same way, with more federal power, more academic theories imposed on middle-class neighborhoods, and another hardcover book advanced to explain why everything went wrong. As the driving intellectual architect of this housing package, she has once again applied her signature formula, diagnosing a crisis largely created by the very regulations she supports, then prescribing an even bigger dose of Washington control as the cure. The former Harvard professor no doubt already has a sequel to A Fighting Chance in the works, one that will undoubtedly mourn the housing affordability catastrophe this bill will deepen. while carefully omitting her own name from the list of authors who caused it. Under the guise of streamlining construction, the legislation also weakens environmental review requirements, selectively, of course. There's nothing conservatives love more than cutting red tape, but this isn't principled deregulation. It's a carve-out for developers who happen to check the right equity boxes, while ordinarily homeowners and local governments lose their ability to have a say in what gets built next door. The bill picks winners and losers based on a social justice metrics rather than market demand. And that's before we get to the immigration problem. You don't need an economic degree to understand supply and demand. American cities are already bursting at the seams because Washington has spent decades importing millions of low-skilled immigrants with no plan for where they will live, work, or send their kids to school. The result is sky-high rents and unaffordable home prices for the Americans who are already here, you and me. Rather than addressing the obvious, namely reducing the demand pressure through immigration enforcement and lower legal quotas, this bill tries to solve the problem by flooding the zone with subsidized housing and government vouchers. It effectively guarantees there will never be any political pressure to reduce immigration because federal housing programs will simply pick up the slack. Then there are the catch and release social policy riders tucked inside affirmative action contracting rules for builders, preferred hiring quotas masked as community benefit agreements, census-driven redistribution formulas that punish red states for sound governance while rewarding blue jurisdictions for the very zoning laws and regulations that created their crisis in the first place. This is not a housing bill. It is a Democratic wish list with a siding and a shingled roof. President Trump is right to hold this legislation hostage. In fact, he should go further and veto it outright. The Republican Study Committee and conservative members should refuse to support any override veto. A true conservative housing agenda would look radically different. Cut illegal immigration, scrap disparate impact rules that make building costly, remove barriers to cheaper construction materials, get the federal government out of local zoning decisions, and let Americans keep more of their own money instead of laundering it through HUD. Congress has the power to stop this. All it takes is courage. Let the clock run out, let the president veto it, and let this awful bill go down in flames before it permanently transforms the American neighborhood. Now you see, folks, that's what's at stake in the elections. When you go into the voting booth locally, you're actually either empowering this behavior or you're weakening it. If a candidate says that they're not on board on that, but they have a record that says that they are, that's a tell that they may not be fit for the job you want to hire them for. All right, I want to read you one more. I really like this one, so let me get the headline for you. A Magistrate, Not a Judge, by Steve. I start with a quote, famous quote. Those magistrates who can prevent crime and do not, in effect, encourage it. Cato the Younger said that. That's how long ago that was said. It is one of the most outrageous and reckless realities in American governance. In dozens of states, including North Carolina and Virginia, men and women who have never pulled an all-nighter studying constitutional law, never passed a bar exam, and never stepped foot in a law school are given the power to decide whether accused rapists, armed robbers, and repeat violent felons walk out of jail and back onto your streets before trial. These are not judges in the traditional sense. These are magistrates. Low-level court officers often armed with nothing more than a 4-year college degree in communications or prior work as a teacher, a football coach, or a bartender, and they're playing roulette with public safety in the most consequential doorway of the criminal justice system, the initial bail hearing. In North Carolina, over 80% of magistrate judges do not hold a law degree. 80%. 8 out of 10. Not only do they not need a JD, they do not need this to have studied criminal procedures, evidence, sentencing guidelines, or risk assessment with any rigor. To become a North Carolina magistrate, you can qualify with nothing more than a 4-year college degree in any field whatsoever, or an associate's degree plus 4 years of vaguely related experience, or 8 years as a law enforcement officer. That is it. The state of North Carolina will then swear you in and let you spend your first 6 months on the job with absolutely zero training. Less than 1 work week to begin adjudicating cases, setting bail, issuing arrest warrants, and determining whether defendants charged with violent felonies go home or stay behind bars. The result? A documented pattern of clear procedural errors, including, according to research published in the Columbia Law Review, not Steve, the Columbia Law Review, setting inappropriate bail, which means these unqualified individuals are turning loose dangerous predators based on little more than gut instinct and a checklist they barely understand, not to mention woke ideology, but we'll get to that in a second. Virginia is no better, and in many ways it is worse. When someone is arrested in the Commonwealth, they are dragged before a magistrate, not a judge, in a proceeding conducted behind closed doors without the presence of a defense attorney. Let that sink in. The accused, often confused, terrified, and unrepresented, stands before a magistrate who may have no legal training whatsoever, and that magistrate makes the initial call on freedom or detention. Then came the 2021 bail reform catastrophe that Virginia unleashed on its citizens. Under this disgraceful statute, magistrates are now directed to operate under a presumption that accused criminals should be released even when they are facing serious charges and even when they have violent criminal histories. A Commonwealth's attorney can object, but the presumption is for release. And what has been the result? Bloodshed and chaos. The Virginia State Crime Commission's own data is staggering and damning. After the 2021 reforms took effect, annual recidivism rates, repeat offenders, for those released shot up to 20 to 23% compared to 17 to 20% before the reform. One prosecutor's office found that bail reform directly led to increases in pretrial release, recidivism, bond failure, and violent crime. Let me say that again. The state's own numbers confirm that more violent criminals were cut loose and they returned to offend at higher rates. These aren't abstract statistics. They represent innocent people beaten, robbed, raped, shot, stabbed, and terrorized by defendants who should have been detained but were instead released by magistrates following a philosophy that treats violent predators like victims of circumstance. The entire construct is a sick joke on the notion of justice. A lawyer in North Carolina or Virginia must complete 4 years of undergraduate education, 3 years of grueling law school, pass the bar exam, and test everything from constitutional protections to criminal statutes, submit to character and fitness review, and then spend years in practice learning the stakes of every decision. That lawyer must understand case precedent, statutory interpretation, and the difference between a low-risk first-timer and a career violent offender who has proved time and again that he cannot abide by society's rules. But the magistrate who overrules that lawyer's objection or who cuts the violent recidivism loose with a signature bond may have spent the previous decade teaching third-grade social studies, mixing Long Island iced teas, or calling football plays. When that magistrate lacks legal acumen, lacking the adversarial testing of open courts, and often captive to progressive ideological reform mandates, flips the release switch, the consequences fall on the public, you and me. And those consequences are not theoretical. They are dead bodies in parking lots, battered domestic violence victims who thought the system would protect them, and neighborhoods held hostage by a revolving door of thugs who laugh at the condition of release they have no intention of honoring. This is not merely incompetence, it is a systemic contempt for the safety of law-abiding public. The legal scholar Sarah Sternberg Green correctly diagnosed the rot. The tolerance for non-lawyer judges is a symptom of the devaluation of legal problems faced by the poor, because these initial hearings disproportionately affect those who cannot afford private counsel. The system shuts them into a star chamber presided over by the least qualified actors in the judiciary. It is class warfare by negligence, and it treats the constitutional protections and bodily safety of vulnerable communities as afterthoughts. I will read the rest of it at the end of this break as soon as you come back, and I hope you do. I'm having a great time. I hope you are too. This is Steve Abramowicz, host of America the Beautiful. Hey, Steve A here. Are you a speaker, artist, or creator stuck doing everything yourself? At Heartland Media Group, you don't have to. We're the fully integrated media company that handles speaker bookings, artist management, social media growth, book publishing, and movie and TV development. One team, one vision, zero limits. Stop juggling a dozen agencies. Get the partner built for your success. Visit heartlandmediagroup.com. That's heartlandmediagrp.com. You'll be glad you did.